Well, golf fans, it is officially PGA Championship week here on the Big D podcast, and you know what that means? We're bringing out the driver at Quail Hollow for the season's second major. Before I bring in Tom, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page, where on this Mother's Day we celebrate all mothers, and we also celebrate the world's best golfers. Also, check out the Big D podcast, Spotify, and Apple. So joining us, the biggest golf and Nottingham Forest fan I know, and in a couple of weeks, Forest and Chelsea might be battling for a Champions League spot. So there might be some a friendly wager happening. But Tom, it's PGA Championship week, mate. So you know what that means.
Yeah, what it means is we need to find a winner before we get to that horrible final game of the season, so that we can wager the money that we win this week at Quail Hollow on that Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea game. But Dylan, always a pleasure to join you for the big events. 4 times a year we get together, and we have a decent track record, right, of finding these winners, and I hope that we can do it again this week.
Yeah, honestly, I think the PGA Championship is clearly the fourth of 4 majors because Augusta's got its own history and tradition. The U.S. Open's the toughest test, and the Open is the only major across the pond. But PGA, I don't know. There've been surprises, but then there've been non-surprises when non-surprise being a bad word, but we've had big names win PGAs.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those that I think Augusta's kind of in a class of its own, if I'm being honest. I think the Masters is just its own, the one that can go to the same course every year, stands up, same test. Everyone knows it. They still can't kind of beat it until Rory McIlroy finally did in 15 goes, whatever it was. But I think the PGA Championship has closed the gap slightly. I think moving back to May was a really good win for them. I think that we get people in the best form and that's bringing out a better major. And they've started to toughen it up, right? They didn't like it used to be a really sort of a lot easier event. And I think having it now and getting it closer to that US Open style has been a really big thing for them. So, yeah, I really like the PGA Championship. I think it's a good opportunity to get into major season. And hopefully, Dylan, unlike last time when we weren't on Rory McIlroy, we can find the winner here.
Yeah, honestly, is the PGA better in May compared to August? Because we remember until 2018, then even 2020, the year Colin Morikawa won in Holden Park, August PGAs. But is the PGA better in May?
I think so. I think because you get to August and you've had the Masters, you've had the US Open, you've had the Open Championship, everyone's been blown away by links golf. Then there's that little period where everyone's kind of got their mind on kind of trying to win $10 million at the FedEx Cup or $12.5 million, whatever it is now. And I think there's just a bit of burnout when it was in that August spot. And now it's in May. I think the players are really up for it. It's their second chance of the season. Few huge storylines this year, didn't right? With Jordan Spieth still going for the Grand Slam. Spoiler alert, I don't think he's going to do it. But Rory McIlroy obviously trying to kick off the second leg of a annual Grand Slam or a calendar year Grand Slam would be really exciting. That a golf course that he usually dominates at. So I think we need to look at some learnings from how did people play at Quail Hollow in 2017 versus what they normally do at the Wells Fargo Championship. But otherwise, I think it's a really exciting event, and moving to May has helped that.
Are you going to look at this week differently, because we know Quail Hollow has hosted the Wells Fargo Now Tourist Championship for decades? Are you going to look at this week like the Quail Hollow, like the tourists on steroids? Or are you going to look at this more like 2017? Because I'm thinking more back to when the U.S. Open was at Torrey Pines, and Torrey's hosted the Farmers forever and ever.
Yeah.
But yet that week at Torrey Pines, I like Jon Rahm because of his history and how well he had played going into that week.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to consider there, as you say. I think one, they will make it harder. I think that there's no two ways about it. You go back to the 2017 PGA. I think Justin Thomas, you'll know better than me, but I think it was 8 under that he won on, right? So that in itself kind of explains that we should be in for a slightly tougher test than what we expect at Wells Fargo. But by the same token, I think, as you said, we don't want to dismiss form. John Rahm coming back to Torrey Pines and playing so well with the regular event, and it's tough, isn't it? Because if Rory McIlroy had won the 2017 PGA Championship, you'd go, well, that makes sense because he's so good at the Wells Fargo Championship. But realistically, he shouldn't really make a difference. He is, one of the 2-3 best players in the world. So you have to factor that in as well. And if you look at kind of the top 10 from the 2017 PGA Championship, we had some really rogue names in there. I mean, Francesco Molinari was second that year, but we had also Graham Dillett 7th, Kevin Kisner 7th, Matt Kuchar, Jordan Smith 9th, Chris Stroud 9th. And he shot 5 over on the final day. So he was right in the mix up until Sunday. So I think we will get a few surprise names because it is just going to be a tougher test, and that has to be considered. But I don't think it hurts to look at the course from the Wells Fargo either.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the course you've played a million times and having familiarity. I mean, even the 2022 President's Cup was at Quail Hollow, if memory serves me right. So guys who played there that week might think, you know what, I played well here.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing. So I looked at sort of Max Homer's career at the Wells Fargo, and then the fact that he went 5-0, didn't he, at the President's Cup in 2022, as you mentioned. And so towards the end of last year, I kind of put a bet on him. He was 70-1 for this, and I put an early bet on him, thinking, we can get some value here. He'll be short on that when the week comes because everyone will look at his course form. It turns out, Dylan, that Max Homer's turned into one of the worst players on the PGA Tour, so I cashed that bet out pretty quickly. But I do think it is worth looking at, and we do need to consider that. And also, I think the other thing, Dylan, is to focus on how people have just played at the PGA Championship in general, right? Like, I think you learn a lot from just seeing how people turn up year on year at the same major. We see the same people compete at the US Open every year. We see the same profile of players at the Masters, and we can really think about the same sort of thing at the PGA Championship. We still get the same kind of contenders. I mean, Brooks Koepka's won 3 of them, right? So it's obvious that the setup suits the same type of people each year. So even if we just went back to 2019, Dylan, when it moved to May and just focused in on the last kind of 5 years, even that will give you a good indicator, plus the course form as well.
Yeah, and also, it's not like the schedule's really much different. It's not like we're playing Quail Hollow. Playing Quail Hollow a week before after the tournament's usually held. So there's no real difference in the weather. It's not like we're playing Pebble Beach in June where it's going to be hard, firm, and fast.
Yeah, that is a good point to make, and I think that's really important. Then actually to consider that is that we are playing in that same time of year, because if it was, in August as it was the last time it was here in 2017, that's a completely different golf course than it was, this year. So one thing to definitely consider, it's probably going to be a slightly easier scoring this time around, but there'll be something in the middle between the Wells Fargo and the 2017 renewal, I think, and I think we can learn plenty from both. So I'm looking forward to it. There's lots to lean on.
Yeah, we've already mentioned golf schedule a little bit. Our friend Matt, who will be here later in the week, has mentioned about how there are all far too many events in California and Texas and Florida. And as someone who lives in Florida, you'd think I would want more events. But I don't know. It seems like, there are not enough events on the East Coast. How would you change the PGA Tour / major schedule?
Yeah, I think they need to really focus on getting a better warm up for each of the majors. So it used to be that people used to play in Texas the week before the Masters. I think they're now realizing it's probably not that favorable. And then you used to have the Scottish Open for the Open Championship. That works really well. It's good. You've got a links test before the major. But yeah, I think they need a slightly better test the week before a PGA. I think they're getting it slightly, I guess, with the Truist Championship this week over at Philadelphia Cricket Club. But we had no idea what the scoring was going to be like there. We couldn't know until this week. So I think it's a case of making the events better. And by that, I mean that we have full fields instead of these 70, 80 man fields and no cut. I'd like to go back to having cuts again. And I think they just need to get around a bit more. They just, as you say, they seem to focus on two hotbeds in Texas and Florida, and a lot to do with that is probably weather and things like that, and where a lot of the golfers are based, right? A lot of the golfers are based in Florida and Texas, so it suits especially the European guys that come and live in Florida. It helps them, but yeah, I think there's a lot that the tour can do differently at the moment, Dylan. That I think at the moment they've focused all their attention on beating Liv and beating the bad guy. That they've sort of stopped looking at their own products and what they can do to improve. So getting some match play back onto the schedule is important, I think. Even if they do it in years where there isn't the Ryder Cup, then they just go that we do it every other year, and that way the players have something to lean on. I think that's really the way I would go. They're the first few changes I would make.
Kev Kisner was sure like another match play event, particularly if it's in Austin, right?
Yeah, especially someone like Matt Kuchar and Jason Day. They always used to like the match play as well. We can roll out Hunter Mahan from retirement as well, and we'll really enjoy the match play.
Oh gosh, are you gonna bring Monty out of retirement now?
Yeah, we can have some legends from the game, can't we? Get Lee Westwood back on the PGA Tour, and he can win some more Ryder Cup matches as well. But yeah, it's a funny old time in golf. Really, I think we're yearning for a little bit more now that we want all the players back together, don't we? We're only seeing them 4 times a year at the moment. So once they've got that figured out, we'll be in a better spot.
If I could change golf schedule, there would only be 3 signature events a year. Only 3 signature events a year. One would be Riviera Tigers event, one would be the Arnold Palmer, and one would be the Memorial.
Yeah.
And in all those fields, not only would the PGA golfers be able to play, but the LIV golfers be able to play. So then we have the best of the best, no holds barred. We have everybody playing, and I would make it where LIV could play the players too. We don't need 6 signature series events where guys basically have to play. Guys must play Tigers event in Riviera, Arnold Palmer in Orlando, and then Jack's event in Muirfield.
And that would be a really easy sell, right? Because you then say it's the 3 biggest legends of the game, and you know Arnold Palmer gets his, Jack Nicklaus gets his, and then Tiger Woods has theirs, and then the players, which is meant to be this de facto 5th major, would make up 4 real signature events on top of the majors. So then 8 times a year you get everyone together. It would add a lot of weight and a lot of excitement. I like those changes. I do think we get the match play on there, and then everyone's dreaming, right? And ultimately, I think then it's going to come to a point where they're just going to do some sort of deal and they can all just play whatever they want eventually. But until then, they probably need to find a temporary solution. And yours sounds good. I like it. So if you send a strongly worded email to the commissioner, I'm sure we can, or just pop down the road. You're not too far away from Ponza Vedra, right? So pop down there and have your say. We might get things moving.
Maybe Tiger can be like the official ambassador of the golf now that he can't play, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, that is there's a lot to say about that one, isn't there? But
yeah. You mentioned Jordan Spieth, and I mean, it seemed like Rory went forever going for his Grand Slam, got it at Augusta. Obviously, everyone will ask Jordan Spieth if he could get the Grand Slam at Quail Hollow, but what if you had to bet on one and Phil at the U.S. Open? But I don't think Phil's winning the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I think the time.
If you could lay a nickel on somebody to be the next Grand Slam winner in golf, who would it be?
It's a good question because you've got. So what have we got? We've got Brooks Koepka's got 2 of them. Rahm's got 2 of them. Spieth's got 3 of them. Scheffler's only got 1. JT's only got 1. Morikawa's got 2.
Xander's got 2.
Who is that? Sorry,
Xander's got 2.
Xander's got 2. I think it comes down to Xander and Brooks, and I think the reason for that is JT. I can't see him winning an Open Championship, and I don't know that he's as suited to Augusta as people think he is. So I think we then have Brooks, who we know can definitely win at Augusta. Xander, we know can definitely win at Augusta. And I think they're both capable. Obviously, Xander's now then got to go to the US Open, which he loves. Brooks has got to go to the Open, which he's more than capable of doing, right? I think that's absolutely fine. I think it's Xander, because I just think Brooks is too inconsistent now. Injuries are probably catching up. I think Xander's the obvious one, maybe followed by John Rahm.
I'm actually going to surprise you in my pick. I'm going to say Colin Morikawa.
Okay.
Because in a way, I think Colin Morikawa is overdue, a little like JT to win. I mean, I don't know what like Colin Morikawa's suspected win tally would be, but I think Colin Morikawa is going to win eventually. I mean, you got the Open, and you got the Open right near you.
Yeah, I was there.
And I did not think Colin Morikawa would win the Open on his debut.
No, I think that's a really important point. Is that he is the one that would be the least likely for him, right? Like him, everyone would sort of look at him and go, he's not an Open champion. It wasn't really an Open championship that week. It wasn't quite as tough as you'd expect. So
Xander shooting a 65 last year.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I can see the Morikawa one. The reason I'm so hesitant about Morikawa, Dylan, is he's just having a hard time winning anything, let alone another 2 majors. And I know it's a bit of a lazy take, but a lot of it's about how he played without crowds or with limited crowds in a couple of those. And he does seem to have a bit of a problem at the moment. And yeah, so it makes sense on paper. Like he's probably got the easiest run in the US Open and the Masters suit him, but I think Xander's probably got a little bit more killer instinct. But that could be a recency bias based on the fact that he won 2 last year.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If we look at Quail Hollow this week, though, like specifically, I think we consider it's one of those that's going to lean into those bigger hitters, right? Especially if we can get some soft conditions. Par 71, nearly 7,700 yards. It's only a slight increase, right, than what they played in 2017, but it's enough to make it more difficult for the likes of Jordan Spieth, for the likes of Colin Morikawa, unless they're really good with their long irons, which they can be. I think when we think about these types of places, not too dissimilar from the likes of Torrey Pines, Bay Hill, those types of golf courses, it's going to be a lot of what you do on the closing Green Mile, right? That's going to be a massive factor. Tom Fazio likes to give people headaches there. It's just an all-round test, like a real all-round test. I think it does, unfortunately, require a slightly bigger hitter off the tee to feel massively confident. I do think certain players can make their way around there that are shorter off the tee. Obviously, Patrick Reed was second here in 2017. So was Francesco Molinari. Neither of them particularly big hitters. But I think there is an obvious advantage if you can get it away off the tee.
Yeah, and also I think knowing if this course dries out, guys who played well on fast greens. I mean, we saw what happened at Augusta when guys could and couldn't make putts on Augusta, and I think Quail Hollow will be more of the same this week.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at some of the players, I sort of mentioned some of the surprise names in Graham Dillette, Chris Stroud, Jordan Smith, even from England. I mean, Jordan Smith, greens in regulation was a thing. Graham Dillette, the same thing. They would always, pound the greens. They obviously couldn't quite get close enough to Justin Thomas because they couldn't make those putts that you talk about there. And it'll be the same with the likes of, Brian Harman was inside the top 20 that week, and he probably just didn't have it quite going that week. And, just supreme ball strikers can put themselves in the mix, but just can't hold the putts. That seemed to be the story back in 2017. So, yeah, I think that makes perfect sense and kind of leads us in nicely, I guess, to kind of what player we're looking for, I think.
Yeah, I think you and I are on the same eye when it comes to Bombers having an advantage. Although seemingly Bombers may have an advantage, and yet Victor Hovland's been been in contention the last two PGAs, and I wouldn't put Victor in the Bryce and Roy drive contest.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I think you've got kind of like Bryson, Rory. It used to be kind of DJ and Bubba back in the day, right? They used to be these kind of like standout drivers of the golf ball that just led everything by distance. But I think you've kind of got these Ludwig Bears, you've got the Victor Hovland who are a little bit more accurate and can also, drive it a reasonably long way. And Justin Thomas was the same. He gets it out there quite far considering his stature, right? They didn't like a very small, frame. Yet he very much keeps up with the rest of them. So I think they all hit it far enough. And yeah, I think we're looking for someone. I wouldn't want to limit myself to, and we'll come on to this when we talk about the kind of picks, right? I don't think we're going to limit ourselves to just big hitters, but I think that's the easiest way to get it done based on recent history.
Yeah, I was thinking what other changes have happened since Quail Hollow. By the way, if anybody's going to Charlotte, it might be raining early in the week, so maybe bring your ponchos.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much yet. I haven't dig really deep into the course yet and all those changes. I know, as I said, they lengthened it slightly from the kind of 7600 up to 7626. But other than that, I don't know if you've seen any more changes since at least the 2017 renewal.
Yeah. I also will look at guys who played well in Bermuda.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
So guys who played well in Bermuda, maybe played well in North Carolina. I'm not saying we're getting. I'm just not saying we're getting another U.S. Open. I'm saying we're not getting another U.S. Open like what we saw in June. But guys who play well, maybe what's the event in Memphis? The FedEx St. Jude.
Yeah.
So guys who played well in Memphis might not be at that big of a disadvantage here.
Yeah, I like it.
So, I mean, if you look at the DK pricing, you're going to have to pay for everybody. I mean, Scheffler's $13,000, Rory's 12, Bryson's 11.5, Ludwig's 10.8, Xander's 10.7, Collins 10.4, Rahm's 10.2, JT's 99, Victor 98, Brooks 97, Joaquin Neiman 96, Cantley 95, Hideki 94, Spieth 93, Lowry 92, Fleetwood 91. I mean, but they're all some guys in the 5K range. They're all guys in the 5K range. Let me see. Mackenzie Hughes 5'6", Eric Cole, Olsen, Gary Woodland. So, how do you think you imagine spending over a quarter of your salary on Scotty Scheffler for the PGA.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's one of the biggest eye-catching things for me from that list. Unfortunately, here in the UK, we don't get DraftKings now. But
that's a ripoff. Trust me, my friends in the UK are mad at it with best ball. That's a story for another day.
But the thing that sort of caught my eye the most was how much of a gap there is between Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler, right? I mean, $13,000 for Scotty Scheffler, $12,000 for Rory McIlroy. I mean, we're talking about Rory McIlroy, I think, is the best golfer
100%
at the moment. I know that, we can't ignore the 31 under win by Scotty Scheffler, but by the same token, it doesn't change anything for me on how I felt about him coming into this. I still think Rory McIlroy is the favourite. So for them to be $1,000 apart with Rory McIlroy's course, I mean, Scotty Scheffler's never even played the Wells Fargo, right? So it's not. I'm guessing he's probably seen the golf course and it's not completely new to him. But I would definitely take that $1,000 discount. It's the first thing I do. Already, I like the couple of names you listed out there in the 5K range. I think Mackenzie Hughes can certainly make a bit of an impact, although it's a longer golf course. He does seem to stand up. So, I think that's certainly the way to look at things. It's going to be what you do with that kind of second pick, Dylan, that's probably going to have a huge impact. Everyone sort of says about how you can, win with your 5K guys and all this sort of stuff. But I think it's what you do, because I'm pretty sure that kind of, Scheffler, Rory, Xander are all going to give you a kind of chance. Bryson's going to give you a huge chance, I think, in this tournament. So I'm not necessarily concerned about which one is the top. Obviously, you want the winner of those kind of 3 or 4 players, but it's going to be that, do you make the right decisions with the Hovlands and the Fleetwoods? I mean, I couldn't be paying any sort of money for Tommy Fleetwood right now, but like that's going to be a really important move. So that's where I think I'd spend the most time is, look, everyone kind of has their favourite already at this point. They know who they're going to like at the top. And it's going to be, you really need to have a thought about that kind of next guy in the 9K range or the high 8s to really understand where your week's going to go. But just looking back at the PGA Championship specifically, Dylan, we can look at a couple of different trivia questions. I'm going to try and stump you. I don't normally achieve it, but we're going to try here. So the first question I've got, Dylan, do you know who the youngest winner ever of the PGA Championship is?
Just thinking. Would it be Tiger and Medina 99? That would be too easy, right?
Yeah, not him.
How far back do I have to go?
A long time.
Jack Nicklaus in like the early 60s?
It's way back. It's kind of like you would know the name, but you wouldn't even know what happened.
Oh, gosh. Okay. That's what I was thinking. Sam Snead?
Even earlier.
Oh, gosh. Is it, who was the guy? Walter Hagen?
It's in that, I think it's kind of that range. I think it's not Walter Hagen, but it's that era. I think they played in the same sort of time.
Yeah, that was back when they played match play at the PGA.
Yes, that sort of range.
Who was that? I'm trying to think. Because Bobby Jones never won a PGA, right?
I'm not sure, but it wasn't him. I'll give you a hint, because I did catch you out, which is nice. He's a Grand Slam winner.
Gene Sarazen?
There you go. Youngest winner of the PGA Championship was Gene Sarazen. He won it as a 20-year-old back in 1922, which I'm sure you remember well, Dylan. I'm sure you remember watching that back on black and white.
And the rabbit ears, right?
Yeah, I'm not even entirely sure they had TVs back then, but 1922. So he might not even have won it. No one can actually really prove it, apart from the kind of handful of people that would have been there. And then the other question I had is, where did Jack Nicklaus win the PGA Championship for him to set the record for the most major wins?
Oak Hill?
Wasn't Oak Hill.
Oh, I think it's Baltusrol?
No, not one that we've played recently.
Oh gosh. If it's the one in Colorado, I'm going to be kicking myself.
Let me just look at where it is. because my American geography is not great. So I have the name, but I don't know where it is.
Is it that I would be familiar with?
It's in Ohio.
Oh, Firestone?
It's not. It's not Firestone. Firestone's on the list, but it's not that one.
Wouldn't be. Couldn't be Muirfield, right? No. What would it be?
It's Canterbury. He won the 1973 PGA Championship at Canterbury.
What course did Nicholas win in '80?
Don't know.
Because I thought that was the one he broke the record. PGA. Yeah, that was. I thought he broke the record at Oak Hill. I was right that Jack Nicklaus won the 1980 PGA at Oak Hill.
There you go. I mean, that's close enough, right? I mean, this could be some dodgy trivia as well. You know, it could be me. Let's give you a bit more of a recent one, shall we? Let's have a look. I've got another one here. Who was the last player to win the PGA Championship when they were number one in the world?
Oh gosh. Now I'm thinking. I'm gonna say Roy 2014 at Valhalla.
It's close, but it's not the one. I think he was world number one, but there's been one since.
Okay, so because JT wasn't number one, and would it have been Brooks the year he won 18 or 19? Okay. Huh. That's interesting because no. Jason Day was the number one he won at Wilson Straits, right?
It was Jason Day.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah, Jason Day was the world number one when he won that and beat Jordan Spieth by 3 strokes.
Man, you imagine Jordan Spieth winning 2 majors that year and not being world number one?
Tough. Yeah, that's what we've got down here. I don't know if that's like whether he was world number one at the time. I'll try to double check. I think there's some fact checking to go on here, Dylan, because so it's 2015 because you mentioned the Jordan Spieth thing.
Because Spieth won. I know Spieth won the.
Yeah, that's definitely not true. So that is a bad quiz question.
I'm gonna dock you for that.
Yeah, you should do. You should. I mean, to be fair, I'm only reading it off of a sheet, so it's not my fault. But yeah, it's incorrect, and I'm glad you called it out. It means that you win for calling it out. In which case, it was probably Rory McIlroy then, back in 2014.
Let me see. Yeah, McIlroy was world number one for a better part of a year in 14 and 15, and then Spieth was world number one in 15. Day was world number one September of 15, but that was after the PGA.
Yeah, he was number 5 going in and was number 3 by the end of the year. So I don't know where they've got this fact from, but it's wrong. It's wrong. So there we go. Could be wrong about Jack Nicklaus as well. And I could have really just thrown you with some really poor quiz questions this week. So
all right.
We'll blame you.
To get onto a streak that maybe you can control. Who is on your betting card for the PGA?
So, do you want the person that's going to win first, or should we come to that later?
I think we should come to that later.
So, one of the names, and we've already talked about him a couple of times now, and he goes against the narrative that we're building around. But the one that I like the look of is Patrick Reed. He was second here in 2017. We've just seen him finish third at the Masters, right? After another really good week there, inside the top 12 all week long. He's just finished fourth at Live Korea. And when you look at his kind of course form here, I mean, obviously on top of the second place finish in 2017, he's been 8th, 28th, and 6th in the Wells Fargo since. And even when he was 28th, he was in 9th place, I think it was, going into the final round. And he was better placed for the first 2 rounds. He was inside the top 4. So inside the top 10 all the way up until Sunday in the one where he didn't finish inside the top 10. He just seems to like it. Now, I think my one concern is that when he's been at the Wells Fargo, he's not managed to get quite onto the winner's circle. And I think that's because of that slight lack of distance. Dylan, what I said about that could be what creates the very difference. But if it does get tougher, we've seen that his best result has come in the PGA Championship. And I think that will happen again with Patrick Reed. We could be looking for another top 5. And, you know, he's had 3 top 20s in his last 5 PGA Championship starts since that second in Quail Hollow, and he's just looked really good in the majors. He just looks solid. It's Augusta where I think he's probably most likely to win a second one, but this is a good spot for him, especially at kind of he's 90-1, Dylan. I thought that was just a really big price. That's a big factor in it. Is that do I think he's going to win? I think it's tough because of that lack of distance off the tee, but I think he's the sort of person that keeps himself in the mix all week long based on the history. So Patrick Reed is 1 at 90-1, who I do think is worth looking at. I don't know yet whether I'm going to bet on this person because putting real money on this man worries me a little bit. But Sung Jae Im's finding form at the right time. And when you look at his kind of PGA Championship record, it's not great, but I just trust him to kind of get in the mix a little bit. He played okay, I think, here in the past. He's finished 8th and 4th the last 2 years in the Wells Fargo Championship. So again, another one that might just struggle with the distance off the tee, and this could be a classic. He's good in the Wells Fargo, but not very good in the PGA Championship. That's certainly been the case throughout his major career. But again, 80-1 for someone who, as we're kind of recording here, Dylan, I'm just looking at the Truist Championship leaderboard, and he was up there to start the day. He's had a bit of a slow start. He bogeyed the first hole, but he was in the mix there, and you know, he just seems to be popping up at the right time. So big price, Sung Jae Im. I think he's someone to look at potentially as an each-way player as well.
Yeah, interesting with him because, I mean, he played well at Augusta, but Sung Jae Im usually plays well at Augusta. So
yeah,
maybe get a good run of form.
Yeah. Well, I think like the other thing to really look at as well is that just people that have just been the best in the PGA Championship in general. I mean, you talked about, do we focus on Wells Fargo? Do we focus on kind of PGA Championship form? What do we do? Just looking at the PGA Championship, we obviously have Brooks Koepka's won 3 of the last, what are we talking about, 7 PGA Championships now, or 3 of the last 8, sorry. You've had Scotty Scheffler's finished inside the top 8 in 4 of his 5 appearances in the PGA Championship, 1 miscut. Victor Hovland, you mentioned, has been 2nd and 3rd in the last 2. Bryson DeChambeau has been inside the top 4 in 3 of his last 4. Justin Rose, 4 top 10s in his last 5 PGA Championships.
But
I think we can ignore him. But also Morikawa, 1st, 8th, and 4th, either side of 55th and 26th. So those names are the kind of people that you think, you know, JT's won a couple, Rory's won a couple, Jason Day's won 1. Those are the ones that immediately come to mind. But again, like sneaky record, Shane Lowry in the PGA Championship, his last 7 appearances, 12th, 8th, 66th, 4th, 23rd, 12th, and 6th. You know, Dylan, if we're just firing up that Truist Championship leaderboard again. Shane Lowry, didn't he start the day tied for the lead with Tracker? He's now 1 ahead after birdie in the first hole. So maybe we're looking at, you know, a European winner of the PGA Championship. So there's a few names of just people that just enjoy the PGA. Not 100% sure where my money is further down the board because I'm just so high on my my number one pick, which we'll come to. But interested to hear your thoughts on a few of those further down the board.
You're right on Captain America because Patrick Reed should be way. I mean, Patrick Reed should not be where he is. Another guy. You're right. You're right with the guy who was co-leading going into the final round. It's the other guy. Sepp Straka.
Yeah.
I know Sepp's not the longest hitter, but good on Bermuda. And frankly, I think Sepp's got a little bit to prove after he disappointed everybody at Augusta, where it seemed like everybody and their mama wanted Sepp to do well, and then he missed the cut.
Yeah, and I think you're right about proving, because if he goes on to win the Truist Championship this week, which is possible in the next few hours here, right? He's going to very quickly become this regular PGA Tour winner that isn't very good in majors, and that is the same moniker that Max Homa gets hit with, and all those sort of things. Now, Straka's built up the good grace by finishing second in the Open Championship already, finishing seventh in the PGA Championship 2 years ago. I mean, I can't really remember, Dylan, off the top of my head, like Sepp Straka's form at the Wells Fargo. He finished 8th there last year, right? And he was 4th going into the Sunday as well.
Yeah. And mention somebody who, well, I can't go 5 minutes without JT, because I think JT's got another major in him. And you know what? If Brooks isn't winning, JT's probably going to win another PGA. And how about another guy who performed well in 2017, Hideki Matsuyama?
Yeah, I mean, he was, I think, the 36-hole leader at Quail Hollow in 2017. Still second going into Sunday. It was just a little bit disappointing there. I think he's gone slightly off the boil, and the PGA Championship hasn't been his
cup of tea
favorite major, has it? Now, cup of tea is a good saying, but finding form at the right time. He was excellent with his ball striking at Augusta. It was really, really strong. He's inside the top 6 as we speak in the Truist Championship as well. We could be talking very differently about Hideki Matsuyama in 2 or 3 hours if he goes on to win the Truist Championship. He'll certainly be one of the most popular bets if he does do that. Probably better that he doesn't, for people that do want to bet on him next week. I don't mind that. JT is a really interesting one, right? Because I think people are so desperate for JT to get another major. They played him at Augusta, keep thinking he's going to play well there. And I just don't see it yet. You won. I just don't see it, or Augusta. But I mean, how would you ever write him off ever winning the PGA Championship? It could be played anywhere. And that famous story about his dad being, a PGA pro for 100 years is going to keep following him around. So, I think fond memories of backing Justin Thomas on the PGA on this show, 3 years ago now. I think it's one to consider.
Yeah, actually, I think we both won JT that week in 22.
Yeah, for sure. It was a good week for us. I think that was probably one of our first shows, Dylan. It was really nice to hit a winner.
And then Mito Panera announced himself to the golf world with a shambolic shot at the last.
Yeah, and then moved to live, and no one ever heard from him ever again. So tough thing for Mito Pereira.
I mean, and then we got a playoff between JT and Wolves, so nobody ended up losing that day.
Exactly.
And maybe Will Zalatoris will finally win a major.
I mean, if it was this week, I'd be very surprised. But he's really hurt, I think, Dylan. Like, injury-wise, I think it's just...
Will Zalatoris needs to get in the weight room.
Yeah, it's just... He speaks about the swing thought of being trapped in a phone booth. And I think he said it was Ben Hogan that used to do it. And he said, like, he followed that, but to the detriment of it. Like, he was warned a couple of times by doctors that it was going to play harm on his back, and it has certainly taken effect.
I think Will Zalatoris is going to end up like Jason Day and Hideki, just continually fighting back and neck issues.
Yeah, and look, I think Hideki's obviously a bit more capable of keeping it going than those guys, I think, but like, think if you're Jason Day and you go, look, I can contend 2 or 3 times a year, I might still win one more major. That's probably okay. But for Zalatoris, who was right at the start of his career, really, and on that massive upward trajectory, it's really tough. So I hope he figures it out. I really like Will Zalatoris. But yeah, I can't see it being this week at Quail Hollow.
Even Quail Hollow is a course that suits Will, but
yeah, perfect golf. I mean, on paper, like if you could draw up a player, it is Will Zalatoris. Although I think it's Will Zalatoris of a couple of years ago when we were talking about, JT and him in the playoff because he had so much ball speed for the slight frame. Very similar players, I think, Zalatoris and JT, generating a lot of power with not a lot behind them, but seems to have slowed down since he had these injuries.
Yeah. All right. You can lead us now. You can lead us into the creme de la creme.
Yeah. The winner this week, Dylan, it won't come as much of a surprise to people. Anyone that listens to this show, anyone that is listening to the
I thought you were going to let me lead. I thought you were going to ask me first.
Okay. You go first. So you talk us through your number one and done at the PGA Championship. This is for all the marbles, Dylan. I don't want to hear Justin Thomas again. I don't want to hear Justin Rose. Let's get away from the Justin. Let's find the PGA Championship winner of 2025.
PGA Championship has been my spot. Couple wins. Bryson almost nailed this win last year. I hope I'm not a day late and dollar short of my guy. But the crowd's going to be roaring because Rory McIlroy is going to go back-to-back win the Masters and PGA.
Interesting. I think the thing behind it, right, Dylan, is that the general belief is now he's got the Masters done, he can go and do whatever he wants. And if you're in that kind of mindset, I mean, I'll ask you this, Dylan, because this is important to your pick. How many majors do you think Rory McIlroy ends his career with?
9.
Which means that you're going to think he's generally going to repeat the career basically that he's had so far, barring one. He's got 5 right now, so you think he's going to get 4, which I agree with. I think we probably set the line at 7.5, and I think he gets over. I would probably lean towards 8. There's not really going to be a better course for him to try and get everyone excited about this kind of calendar year Grand Slam. He's never going to have a better start because the Masters is always the tricky point. Get that out of the way. Then he goes to Quail Hollow, and then he goes into kind of the US Open and then Portrush. I mean, it would be the perfect year for him. He is the best player in the world. There is no 2 ways about it. He is. How much of a difference do you think there is between him and Scheffler right now?
30%.
Yeah,
Rory McIlroy's won Pebble Beach, Sawgrass, and Augusta.
Yeah,
Rory Scheffler's won won the Byron Nelson.
Byron Nelson. You mean that wasn't impressive to you? I think what was really impressive to me was just the fact that Rory comes back out. He plays the Zurich Classic quite freely. Obviously, not a huge thing for him, but it just looks so much more relaxed. And look, we talk about Rory McIlroy. He's got 4 wins at Quail Hollow. It's the venue for where he won his first PGA Tour event. He doesn't go too many years without winning here. He's got 4 wins, a second, a 4th, 2 8s, and a 10th. He has had a couple of disappointing years here. One of them being Dylan in 2017. Right, he didn't quite bring his A game, but he's just a completely different player right now. He's playing far and away the best golf of his career, I think, at the moment.
Okay, Tom. So who are you picking?
So I'm sticking with my faithful pick, and I'm going with Bryson DeChambeau. He is. I genuinely think, Dylan, and we can trim this up at the end of the year if I'm nowhere near. I think he's getting close to that Brooks Koepka style player where he just revs it up for these major championships. He's a contender every single time. If you see him on the leaderboard, you panic. And he was 33rd here in 2017, but that was kind of at the start of his career. Since playing the Wells Fargo Championship, he came back in 2018 and finished 4th. He came back 2 years later and finished 9th. So he's been really strong at the golf course. You look at his PGA Championship record. He obviously had that 33rd, as I mentioned, in 2017. Missed a couple of cuts, but in the last 4 years, 4th, 38th, 4th, and 2nd. You mentioned the 2nd last year to lose there. But I think finishing so closely behind Xander Schauffele last year, being the player that he is, US Open winner 2 times now, this looks like a good golf course for him. It looks like his drive is going to help. I was really, really encouraged to see that he had found his irons again with some really good form on Live. He finished his 2nd at Live Golf Mexico, leads for the first 2 rounds, then goes wire to wire in Korea. A really strong way to bounce back from the disappointment of Augusta, where he just couldn't get it going on Saturday and Sunday. So I think Dylan, 14-1, Bryson DeChambeau. I just don't know how we end 2025 without another major win from him.
I don't think you're crazy. And actually, I think in a way, Oakmont's a better course. I mean, I think Bryson could win anywhere, but wouldn't surprise me. I think Oakmont, without the trees, might actually suit Bryson better.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point. I think at the moment I'm very much just I'm going to bet him until he gets to a point where, like, if he wins this week, then he's probably going to be kind of, I don't know, 8-1 for Oakmont, right? And then it starts to become a bit more of a conversation. But all these time he's double digits and playing as well as he is, I think you've got to bet him. And it would be really interesting, Dylan, if he wins this PGA Championship. He then has to go into that discussion about the career Grand Slam, because I'm convinced he will figure out Augusta once. He's so good there with his, everyone was talking about how he didn't have the around the green game. He's got that now. And so now he's figured that out. Plus, if he wins this, that only leaves the Open Championship. And yes, I think that's a tough thing, but he's probably going to play St Andrews again, right? And that's a good golf course for him. So I can see it. I can see it happening. I trust him to win anywhere, really, as you said. So he'd have to go in the conversation, even if I don't think the Open Championship is necessarily going to be for him. I think if Phil Mickelson can go his whole career without winning a US Open, Bryson can definitely go his whole career without winning an Open. But yeah, Bryson for this week, I don't see past him, Dylan. I think he's the most obvious bet.
I think I'd rather have Bryson at 14-15-1 than Scheffler and whatever number he is. But that's
I can't believe there's not. Scheffler's actually favourite ahead of Rory right now.
That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
Not when you got the course form to consider, and then I think there's a real big gap. Interestingly, Dylan, we didn't talk about him properly, but Xander Schauffele. So you've got Scheffler at plus 450, Rory at plus 500, and then Bryson at plus 1400, and then you get that kind of 20-1 range. And I think Xander being that big of a difference between him and Scheffler is quite remarkable, really, when you consider
both of them have won the same amount of majors.
Yeah, both won the same amount of majors. The fact that Xander's done it at a couple of different majors, the fact that he's got 2 runner-up finishes in the Wells Fargo Championship the last 2 years, I'm surprised that Xander Schauffele is as big a price as he is. It's just whether people trust him to be fully back from those injury issues.
Yeah, I don't know if Xander's completely healthy from that rib, but you know what? Maybe Xander's like, you know what? I don't care about these events. I'm ready to defend my title.
Why would he care anymore? Like, he doesn't need to care, right? He doesn't need to care about the trophy. He just wants to get more reps in, feel healthy again. I'll be really interested once we've got the data from the Tourist Championship, Dylan, just to see how his ball striking was. If it's really good again, I think he could be it could be just a Bryson and Xander card for me, and just go into it and hope for the best.
I wouldn't mind. I don't think the patrons at Quail Hollow would mind Rory, Xander, Scheffler, and Bryson. Yeah, the 4 biggest names in golf right now.
That'd be good, wouldn't it? And I think, people would probably quite happily switch out Scheffler for JT, and I think you've got the kind of PJ, darling there, because as much as Scheffler should massively be respected, it still doesn't seem that popular, right? Like, people don't seem to come to watch him other than just the greatness aspect. So, I think it's going to be a hell of a week. Bryson's going to do it, Dylan. Unfortunately for you, because you're going to be on Rory McIlroy. Well, all I ask is that we get Bryson versus Rory again.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's the best. That's the best story every week at the moment.
I hope we get. I hope. You know what I hope happens this year? The final round. The final round of the Ryder Cup. Bryson and Rory
Singles.
head-to-head singles at Bethpage.
That'd be good. That'd be really good. Especially if Europe win.
Oh come on! Wow, actually, Europe's got a better team than the Americans do right now.
I've got to be contesting you here. It's like Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea. And
Oh gosh, we don't even have a freaking striker for your game in 2 weeks.
We don't know how to win anymore, so you might be okay. But there we go.
All right, Tom. Thanks for hopping on. Hopefully, Forest and Chelsea are battling the Champions League next year, and maybe our golf one and dones will battle it in Charlotte next week.
I certainly hope so. That's the plan, Dylan.